After battling the harrowing corrupted Titan for 3 long months, Saint Tyrus of the White Feather clan had finally been defeated. Even though she had miraculously managed to survive, with Skytide incapacitated, there was no one left to stop the Winter Beast from advancing on the city. The Titan was already moving closer to the largest and only siege capital left standing in the region. The temperature was falling, and the winds were picking up, heralding the descent of a terrible blizzard. Inevitably, a series of disastrous events was bound to happen. The first of these events and the catalyst that sparked the chain reaction was the withdrawal of the White Feather clan from the Antarctic Center. They had been sent here to support the First Evacuation Army on behalf of the great clan Valor, but were not part of it. Naturally, their first priority was to preserve their saint's life. Even if the Awakened of White Feather had decided to stay, for whatever reason, Army Command would have insisted that they retreat in haste. The life of an allied transcendent was too precious of a resource for the government, too. As the clan's compound turned into a hub of frenetic activity, with everyone hastily preparing for departure, Sunny and Jet were left to their own devices. After their conversation with Roan ended, they found themselves all but ignored by the hurrying members of the clan. No one even remembered to shoo the two Ascended away. They were not in a hurry to leave either, mostly because neither of them knew what to do. The situation had changed too fast and too dreadfully. Sunny felt lost and resigned, and although Jet was trying to hide it, he could see that she was shaken as well. The two of them found a place out of the way and just stood there for a while, silent. Eventually, Sunny said,
"Roan is wrong. It's not all over. Even without Tyrus, we still have a Transcendent. You, me, Bloodwave. We should be able to give the Winter Beast a fight. We already killed one Titan, so why can't we kill another?"
Jet somberly shook her head.
There's an abyssal gap between a fallen Titan and a corrupted one in terms of power. Tyrus was not able to fight the Winter Beast because she was a Transcendent. She was able to fight it because she was a Transcendent whose aspect countered the creature's powers, and an astonishingly steadfast one at that. Even then, you don't understand it, do you?
Sunny frowned.
"I guess not. What is it exactly that I don't understand?"
Soul Reaper let out a grave sigh.
Sunny, there's currently around 30 million people left in Falcon Scott, as well as 20,000 soldiers. There are also 1,000 or so awakened veterans. However, all of them combined wouldn't be able to do anything against a corrupted Titan. Even if there were 10 times more, the result would be the same. Yet, Tyrus alone held the creature back for 3 months. What does that mean?
He stared at her silently for a while, then turned away with a dark expression on his face.
"It means that one saint is worth more than 30 million people, 20,000 soldiers, and 1,000 awakened."
A corner of Jet's mouth twisted slightly.
Smart.
Sunny shook his head.
"What are you getting at, though?"
The hint of a smile disappeared from Soul Reaper's face. She lingered for a few moments, then said,
I am trying to tell you that there are no you, me, and Bloodwave. Bloodwave is going to leave with the White Feather clan. Do you think they are going to let Tyrus travel across the strait unprotected? She is unconscious and vulnerable. What happens if something attacks the ship? Neither Army Command nor Valor would allow that to happen, so the House of Night will do their best to protect the most valuable asset. Which means that Bloodwave won't be here when the Winter Beast arrives.
Sunny gritted his teeth, trying to suppress the blinding fury that threatened to consume his mind.
"This is such crap."
Jet's face twitched, but she calmly shook her head.
No, it's simply resource management.
Sunny stared at her with bewilderment for a few moments, then suddenly laughed.
So what? This is it? It's all over? What about the rest of the poor fools who are stuck in this city?
Soul Reaper remained silent for a while. Then she said evenly,
Well, there are 30 million people left here. With the current speed of evacuation, if the winter beast comes tomorrow, 20 million will die. If it comes the day after tomorrow, 10 million will die. Theoretically, of course. In reality, things are not going to go that smoothly.
Sunny gave her a dark look.
How so?
Jet sighed.
Something like that won't remain a secret for long. As soon as the rumors spread, this whole city will go crazy. Evacuation queue? Forget about it. People will be storming the port and jumping off the cliffs. It's going to be pandemonium.
Sunny opened his mouth, startled by her callousness. However, it only lasted a moment. He was just as jaded after all. If he had used his brain for a moment instead of allowing himself to be rattled, he would have come to the same conclusions. He cursed.
So what are we supposed to do? The two of us, I mean. I refuse to believe that there's no way to slow down the winter beast. Come on, we just need to hold it off for a couple of days.
Soul Reaper gave him a long look. After a while, she said,
Sunny, you might survive the descent of the winter beast. Maybe. Maybe I can survive it too. My cohort is gone though, while yours is not, and your soldiers will die. Ascended like us have no business facing a corrupted titan. As for awakened, they don't stand a chance. So if I were you, I would make sure that they get on a ship as fast as possible. Everything else comes later.
He smiled bitterly.
That's it? You're a damned colonel. Can't you do something?
Jet simply shook her head.
Once the news breaks, my rank won't have any meaning anymore. Who cares about hierarchy in the face of annihilation? Sunny, this is going to be an every man for himself situation very soon. We are all going to have to make some choices. The best we can do is make sure that we don't regret them later. So keep that in mind and do your best. That's all the advice I can give.
She sighed, then briefly glanced at the star insignia on her shoulder and walked away. Before she left, however, Sunny shouted,
Oh yeah? So are you going to get on a ship yourself?
Soul Reaper paused. She remained silent for a few moments, then said without turning back,
I sort of hate ships, to be honest. It is really a pity.
And then she left. Sunny found himself alone, staring at the empty space where Master Jet had been a few seconds ago, shaking his head. He scoffed and turned away.
What a coincidence. I sort of hate ships too.
The first thing Sunny did was go find Belle, Dorn, and Samara. However, none of them had returned from the Dream Realm yet. All three were peacefully asleep in their pods, not knowing that back in the waking world, Falcon Scott was not on the verge of destruction. For now, all he could do was wait. Not wishing to waste time, Sunny tried to go through the official channels to make sure that his cohort was not going to be left out of the evacuation plans. At that point, however, things had already started going out of control, just as Master Jet had predicted. The government complex was in a state of frenzy. The information regarding the withdrawal of the Whitefeather clan and the impending doom approaching the city was supposed to be kept strictly secret, but with people responsible for withholding it realizing that they would most likely be left behind, there was no way for the truth to remain hidden. The news spread throughout the city like wildfire. With it came panic. Sunny spent some time fruitlessly trying to get the logistics officers, or anyone at all, to issue an order for his cohort to evacuate, but no one knew what to do, or even if they had the authority to do anything. Worse still, as soon as St. Tyrus had been defeated, The influence the winter beast was exerting on the region seemed to have doubled in strength. Now, even the robust communication array of the siege capital was having trouble connecting the local branch of Army Command to central headquarters. Even if there was a leader who could bring order to this complicated situation, they were simply too far away. In the end, all he could get from the administrative personnel was a vague promise of a priority placement while boarding the leaving ships. They did not seem to know quite what it meant themselves, but the underlying message was clear. If he could get a spot on one of the evacuation vessels, no one was going to stop him. This was true for all the surviving soldiers of the First Army. If they wanted to leave, they could. Who was going to stop them? After all, the soldiers were armed, while the refugees were not. In the ruthless mathematics of war, their lives were also more valuable. In short, the situation had deteriorated to the point of turning into complete lawlessness. The government officers were simply unable to control it anymore.
Every man for himself.
Sonny was slightly stunned by how quickly the city had descended into chaos. All it took was a few hours. There were some exceptions, of course. For example, someone high up in the chain of command managed to enforce the evacuation of the wounded from the army hospital. However, no one knew how effective exactly the execution of that order would be, or how quickly the evacuation would happen. Sonny was reluctant to leave Lester's fate to chance, though. He returned to the barracks, which had turned hectic and feverish in his absence. Finally, his soldiers woke up, emerging from their sleeping pods with confused expressions on their faces. Not only was the building full of noise, but their leader was also waiting for them with a grim expression on his face. Sparing the three awakened a single glance, Sonny said,
"Let's go get Lester and Kimmy. I'll explain what is happening on the way."
They made their way to the hospital. Outside, the cold was slowly turning unbearable, but despite that, crowds of frightened people were flowing through the streets. Some aimless and lost, some full of frantic determination. The situation inside the hospital was even worse. Unlike the rest of the people in the city, the medical officers had received direct orders to transfer all the patients to the port fortress and await immediate evacuation. However, the orders were vague and hastily compiled, lacking a lot of important details and instructions. Aside from that, moving severely injured soldiers was not as easy as transporting healthy people. Some required special care. Some could not be moved at all unless an awakened healer got personally involved. Rattled, Sonny finally understood what the word pandemonium meant. Cutting through the chaos, he and his soldiers reached Lester's room. After a short conversation with a panicked nurse, they received verbal permission to take him away and barged inside. Neither Lester nor Kimmy seemed surprised to see them. They had already prepared the wounded awakened for departure. He was dressed, freshly bandaged, and holding a pack full of necessary medical supplies and healing agents. The young man had also received a very generous dose of painkillers. Seeing Sonny, he smiled stupidly.
"Cap, Major, where are we going?"
Sonny looked at Kim and gave her a nod.
"Eastern Antarctica. We just need to find you a boat."
The young woman silently took the medicine pack from Lester, hung it across her chest, then forced him to climb on her back. Considering that she was much smaller than the young man, the two of them looked rather comical. But of course, as an awakened, Kim was more than strong enough to carry a person. Before they left, Samara suddenly spoke, her usually calm face turning slightly pale.
"Captain, what about Quentin? We can't just leave him here."
Sonny looked at her for a moment, then somberly shook his head.
"We have to. It doesn't matter anyway. He is in the nightmare by now. If he survives, the spell will create an ascended body for him. If not..." taking him with us won't make any difference."
The five of them grew solemn, then reluctantly followed him out. Luster was mumbling something under his nose, but the rest were deathly silent. On the street, Sonny looked around, then approached a random military vehicle and used his bare hand to tear through the armored alloy, destroying the locking mechanism of its door. With how many soldiers had perished during the siege, there was a surplus of machinery in the city. No one was going to miss one PTV. It was just that he had no time to request proper access. Luckily, Army transports did not have a complicated startup sequence. All he had to do was override the controls with his military ID, then access the internal computer and assign the vehicle to the first irregular company. After that, the PTV recognized Sonny as its valid driver.
Damn, I never even got close to stealing a PTV when I lived in the outskirts, and now I'm swiping one as an Ascended. What kind of logic is that?
Darkly amused, he sent the vehicle barreling forward and maneuvered it through the crowded streets at high speed.
Hold on tight. We need to make a stop first before going to the port.
Soon, he reached the dormitory tower where Professor Obel and Beth were living. Sonny stopped the vehicle and dissipated into the shadows without wasting any time. A few seconds later, he was standing in front of a familiar door. Sonny knocked on it several times, praying that they were both home. Luckily, they were. Walking inside, Sonny quickly looked around the apartment, then turned to Professor Obel and Beth. From their expressions, he understood that they already knew what was happening. Beth's eyes were wide and shaken.
Sonny, is it true?
He nodded, then said steadily,
Get your things. We need to leave as soon as possible.
The young woman seemed startled.
Leave? Leave where?
Sonny spared her a quick glance.
To the port, of course. You need to get on a ship.
She took a small step back.
But our tickets are not due until...
Taking a step forward, Sonny took her by the shoulders and looked her in the eyes.
Forget about the tickets. You're leaving today. Now go. There's no time to waste.
Neither Beth nor Professor Obel had a lot of things to gather, so they were out of the apartment in less than 15 minutes. The old man remained quiet throughout all that time, only speaking when spoken to. His eyes were calm, but burdened. Diving from the chilling cold into the warm interior of the PTV, Sonny checked to see if everyone had settled and drove off. Two beams of light cut through the darkness as the vehicle sped through the snow-covered streets. Once again, they were heading north this time, toward the port fortress of the doomed siege capital. Getting close to the port turned out to be complicated. There were too many people and too many vehicles heading the same way. At some point, driving forward became simply impossible. The road was utterly jammed, which was a truly strange scene. Back in NQSC, PTVs were somewhat of a rare sight, but Falcon Scott was brimming with military transports of all kinds. Understanding that their vehicle was truly stuck, Sonny grimaced and told everyone to get out. As they did, a litany of sounds assaulted their ears. The rumbling hum of engines, the ear-piercing wail of electric horns, the anxious shouts of countless people, all of it fused into a cacophonous cloud of noise. Around them, a vast crowd of people was flowing through the congested road, the vehicles waiting hopelessly for a chance to move forward. There were men, women, and children, some carrying bags and backpacks containing their belongings, some empty-handed. A driver of a massive transport was standing on the side of the cabin, screaming furiously for everyone to get out of his way, and that he had orders to reach the port. His yells were useless, of course. Even if the crowd of people parted, there was another vehicle right in front of the transport, and another one after that, and another one after that, all similarly stuck. The people moving toward the port on foot were acting senselessly as well. It was not like they had a chance of getting on a ship simply by reaching the fortress. Most of them had simply panicked and lost all reason. Some had not even wanted to go, but were swept up by the crowd. In any case, the mob presented a serious obstacle to Sonny. Luckily, his uniform had turned out to be good enough of a deterrent. Where he walked, a small bubble of space magically appeared, allowing his group to advance with sufficient speed. Even in this state, the people were able to recognize a master. Some moved aside out of respect and reverence, some out of fear.
"This is crazy,"
he muttered to himself. Sonny had considered himself an experienced person, and not without reason. From the starless void of the Forgotten Shore to the frozen hellscape of Antarctica, he had seen and lived through a lot of things, both incredible and terrifying. However, he had never experienced anything on the scale of what was currently happening in Falcon Scott. Even the destruction of Ivory City did not quite come close. By the time the cohort reached the northern section of the wall, he was in a grim and somber mood. There was another massive gate. Its wings currently retracted into the framework of the barrier. Beyond it was a vast span of concrete that led directly to the edge of the tall cliffs. Usually, there would be several organized lines of refugees waiting for their turn to use the elevators, and a lot of loader robots carrying cargo to and from the fortress. Now, however, the whole space was covered by a sea of people, all frantic to get closer to the edge and get a chance to descend to the coast. Someone was still operating the elevators, but the personnel of the transfer station had given up on trying to control the mob. People were pressed tightly against the alloy barriers that were meant to prevent them from falling, and some were even trying to climb over them. Nothing but a deadly fall awaited them on the other side, but the climbers seemed completely crazed. Sonny stared at the startling scene for a few moments, then looked away. He felt a chill that had nothing to do with the unbearable cold of the polar winter run down his spine. A human mob was a frightening thing. It was even more frightening because everything had been fine just half a day ago. In such a short time, the whole city seemed to have gone mad.
"What are these fools hoping to accomplish?"
Sonny flinched. What was he hoping to accomplish? Gritting his teeth, he pushed forward through the crowd. His uniform and aura of authority cleared a path, and when that was not enough, he simply pushed people away. With Sonny's strength, it was not at all hard. Remaining gentle enough not to crush anyone was much harder. His soldiers followed. After experiencing the horrors of the nightmare spell and the tempering of countless battles, they all managed to remain composed. Beth and Professor Obel, however, looked deeply rattled. Still, they followed too. After some time, Sonny finally reached the entrance to one of the elevators. Currently, it was closed, since the platform had not yet arrived. The refugees moved slightly aside to give the awakened some breathing room. However, he could still hear their voices.
"Look, a master."
"You there, officer? What the hell is happening? Please take me with you."
"Curse you!"
He kept looking forward, ignoring the yells. Some people tried to ingratiate themselves with Sonny. Some cursed him out and demanded explanations. Some stupidly became overjoyed as if the appearance of an Ascended was going to solve everything.
"At least it's not as cold."
With so many bodies around, the oppressive cold had retreated a little. Eventually, a massive platform arrived from the bottom of the cliffs, and the barrier retracted into the ground. Sonny led his group forward, taking a place near the opposite side of it. From there, he could see the ocean and the port fortress below. There was only one gargantuan ship currently anchored near it, with several large ferries coursing between the vessel and the pier to bring people aboard. The port itself was as crowded as the transfer station, and so was the pier. The situation inside seemed even more chaotic than here. After around 2,000 people and several large transport vehicles entered the platform, the barrier rose once again, and the elevator plummeted down. It seemed to be moving at a greater speed than usual, causing several passengers to yelp in fear. However, the platform safely reached the bottom of the cliffs in less than a minute. There was a walled road leading from the elevators to the port. Half of it was designed for pedestrian traffic, half for vehicles. That road was congested as well, but further away, Sunny noticed soldiers standing watch above it, carrying out their duty with lost expressions on their faces. Luckily, no nightmare creatures had chosen today to attack the city from the coast.
Let's go.
Glancing at Kim, who was still carrying Luster, he continued to the port. It took some time to reach it as well. The closer they got to the pier, the more frantic the atmosphere became. Some of the people here arrived after the terrible news of Skytide's defeat had spread, but some had been here even earlier, happily waiting to be brought away to Eastern Antarctica as per the government queue. Now their chances of getting a spot on the ship were suddenly uncertain.
But we were scheduled to be relocated today. Look, we have tickets. Get the hell out of my way.
Sir, please, just let me through. When is the next ship arriving? When is...
The port officers were desperately trying to create some semblance of order, but it was useless. Still, only so many people could get aboard, so there were soldiers standing guard at the entrance to the pier, and a barrier of alloy mesh that slid up and down, letting groups of refugees proceed further from time to time. Every time the barrier retracted, the crowd grew agitated and tried to push forward, only to be thrown back by the heavy gazes of the guards. Sunny hesitated.
What now?
He looked around, studying the barrier and the crowded pier that could be seen through the mesh. Then, suddenly, Sunny heard a familiar voice.
Move back, damn it, don't push. If you have a spot in the queue, present your ID. If you are a member of the First Army, come that way. Get a hold of yourself and behave like people.
He looked around and saw a tall, handsome man with indigo eyes and hair that seemed somewhere between black and blue, standing in front of the barrier, struggling to hold back the panicked crowd. Sunny raised an eyebrow. Pushing closer to the man, he called out,
Neve? What the hell are you doing here?
The man, it was indeed Master Neve of the House of Night, blinked a couple of times, then looked in his direction with a confused expression.
Sunny, God, it's you. What are, it doesn't matter. I'm now in charge of boarding, I guess.
Sunny led his group to the barrier, stopping right in front of the Night Walker. Neve gestured for a nearby awakened to assume his position and took a step to the side. He gave Sunny a somber look.
That ship over there is where I'm assigned to. We are going to leave once we're at capacity. Actually, we are already over capacity, but a few more people can still be squeezed in, so...
Sunny frowned.
What about Bloodwave?
The Night Walker sighed.
He led the other ship away a few hours ago, with St. Tyrus aboard. There will be more ships tomorrow, and more the day after that if the Winter Beast does not arrive sooner. But Uncle won't be coming back. He'll guard the strait until the relocation is over, and then we will resume evacuating people over the ocean to the northern quadrant.
Sunny nodded.
Figures. Listen.
Neve spoke first, interrupting him.
Do you need to get on the ship?
Sunny grew quiet, suddenly ashamed for no reason. Strangely, he felt thankful to the Night Walker for not forcing him to say it aloud. After a few moments of awkward silence, Sunny shook his head. Ascended could simply retreat into the dream realm whenever they wished. Even if their tether remained in the Antarctic center, a saint would then be able to bring them back to the waking world, to a safer region. Granted, there were no saints on the Ivory Island, so Sunny was a bit more inconvenienced in that regard. Of course, leaving the waking world was not an instantaneous process. It required some time and absolute concentration, so doing it in the middle of a battle was usually impossible. Any Ascended that remained in the city would have to travel to the Dream Realm before the Winter Beast arrived, or risk annihilation with the rest of the mundane people. Still, taking up a spot on a ship would be a waste. And Sunny had long decided to stay and try to stall the Titan anyway. He looked at Neve.
I don't need one, but my people.
Sunny glanced at Beth, Professor Obel, and the members of his cohort. Neve looked at them too. His face fell. The Night Walker hesitated for a few moments, then said quietly,
Sunny, I have 3 spots reserved as a member of the crew. I will give you those. Beyond that, however, I can get the rest of your cohort on board too. Members of the First Army have a priority right to be evacuated, but those additional spots will come at the expense of civilians with officially issued tickets, so it's your decision. He paused and then added apologetically, Sorry, but you have to make it quick. This is going to be the last batch we let in tonight. As though to echo his words, the mesh barrier suddenly slid into the ground with a metallic screech. Soldiers started checking the IDs and letting people pass through one by one. Sunny froze for a moment. His face grew still.
So,
his heart grew heavy.
So, this is what it has come to.
3 spots, or having to displace civilians who had a spot in the queue. His soldiers had all heard what Neve said. Sunny turned around, looking at them. Kim, Luster, Dorn, Samara, Belle, Beth, Professor Obel. What was he supposed to do?
Curse it all.
As Sunny studied the faces of his soldiers, Belle, Dorn, and Samara briefly glanced at each other. Then the giant man looked at Sunny and slightly shook his head. There were no words spoken, and yet, for a moment, Sunny felt as though his heart was pierced by a sharp blade. He lowered his head and then looked at Professor Obel. The old man met his gaze, and the two of them remained motionless for several seconds, as if having a silent conversation. Finally, Sunny looked at the mob of frightened refugees crowding behind the line of the barrier, all desperate to be saved. He sighed.
How terrible. Why the hell did I want to be an officer? Gods, no amount of the damned contribution points was worth it.
Then, Sunny straightened his back and said confidently,
Beth, Professor Obel, you go in first.
Beth gave him a startled glance, but the old man gently pushed her forward. They moved past Neve, the young woman crossing the line first. However, as soon as she did, Professor Obel silently took a step back. At the same time, Sunny pushed Kim and Luster. His push, though, was not too gentle. The two stumbled past Neve, ending up on the other side of the line too. They were one of the last people to be let through. A moment later, the barrier rose with a screech, and the wall of alloy mesh cut off the pier from the rest of the port. Sunny, Professor Obel, Samara, Dorn, and Belle remained on one side. Kim, Luster, and Beth were on the other side. The young woman turned around, confused. When she saw the old man behind the fence, her eyes widened.
Professor, why are you...
Professor Obel smiled.
It's all right, Beth. We already had that conversation, remember? Stop being stubborn and forgive this old man. My old bones really can't endure another journey.
She grabbed the mesh, frantic.
No, you can't. How could you?
He sighed.
I only have a few more years left to live at best. Beth, I might have accomplished a lot in this life, but it's coming to an end.
The old man chuckled.
You will accomplish even more. given time. What? Do you think I was already brilliant at your age? Gods, no. I barely knew how to tie my shoe. Letting someone young take my place is a privilege of mine, especially someone like you, or awakened Kim over there.
Beth stared at him for a few long moments, her eyes glistening. Then she turned to Sonny.
Sonny, what about?
He scoffed.
I'll be fine. It's like you don't know me. There's not a single selfless bone in my body, so you don't really have to worry about my safety.
At that point, Kim finally spoke.
Captain?
Sonny glanced at her and frowned.
You keep Luster and Beth safe. Who knows what will happen? Go board the ship and get the hell out of here, Kim. That's an order.
He remained silent for a moment, and then added,
Also, it's Major, damn it.
And that was that. Soon, Kim, Luster, and Beth boarded a ferry and were taken to the towering vessel. Sonny and the rest remained in the doomed siege capital in Falcon Scott. The air was getting colder and colder. After things were settled, Sonny did not really know what to do. Professor Obel wanted to go back to the dormitory for now, so Sonny asked Belle, Dorn, and Samara to take the old man there. After that, they were supposed to return to the barracks. Left alone, Sonny remained motionless for a few minutes. Then he used Shadow Step to sneak back aboard Neve's ship. Placing a tether there did not take him much time. After the invisible mark was created, he used the same method to return to the port fortress. It was already night, of course. Night and day were absolutely the same during the long winter here in Antarctica. Still, it meant that Winter Beast would arrive in around 12 hours at the earliest, and in no more than 40 at the latest. Sonny slowly made his way back to the elevators. No one was moving in the opposite direction of the port, so he did not have to force his way through the crowd. He just walked slowly, moving aside to let vehicles pass from time to time. The elevators were going up, entirely empty as well. His lonesome figure startled the crowd of people waiting for the platform to arrive at the upper transfer station. Sonny spared them a heavy glance, then sighed and dissipated into the shadow. He had no desire to travel through the mob again. To waste as little essence as possible, he simply glided through the darkness and appeared some distance away in the shadow of the city wall. Then he used a lift to reach the battlements and finally escaped the panicked sea of people. From here, he could see the vast expanse of the city. Falcon Scott was bathed in darkness and suffused with stark artificial light. Snowflakes danced in the frigid air, and above it all, the ghostly aurora swirled like a celestial river of ghostly flames. Countless stars shone coldly high above. Sonny looked at the dreamlike scene for a few moments, then sighed.
How come it looks so beautiful?
On the other side of the wall was the ocean. He could see the port below, the overflowing mass of people within it, and the lone battleship towering above the dark waters. Sonny walked along the length of the wall, keeping his eye on the vessel. There were soldiers standing watch on the wall. Strangely enough, none of them seemed in a hurry to leave their posts. In fact, he could feel a strange mood permeating the air. The crowd of refugees below was almost frenzied, but here on the battlements, the members of the First Army were almost tranquil. It was not the resigned tranquility of desperation either, just unvarnished calmness of people who had been through hell and did not fear the end. Soon he heard one of the soldiers say,
Look, it's moving.
Sonny could see it as well. The battleship was finally departing. The titanic chain rattled as it rose, soon revealing a massive anchor. Then, slowly, the giant vessel started to move, distancing itself from the port. Its departure caused the people packed into the fortress to cry out, the litany of their voices flying on the wind to reach his ears. A raspy female voice responded to the soldier.
Poor guys, huh? I feel bad for them.
It's too damn cold.
The first male voice sounded again after a moment of silence.
Yeah, I hope someone in the port will have enough sense to hand out food, blankets, and something hot to drink. Speaking of something to drink, give that thing here.
Sonny frowned.
Wait, don't those voices sound familiar?
He looked at the pair of talkative soldiers. One of them was a man in the uniform of the First Army. The other was an awakened woman, wearing a beautiful enchanted robe. The two of them were passing a flask of something fragrant between each other while idly observing the departure of the battleship. Sonny tilted his head, surprised. They were Sergeant Gear and Lieutenant Corinne, two officers who had been under his command during the hellish march to Falcon Scott. He had not seen them after reaching the siege capital. Sonny hesitated for a moment, then said,
Hey, you.
Corinne flinched and grabbed the parapet of the battlement with both hands. Sonny sighed. Her face paled a little.
Gear, I think I drank too much. I just heard the devil calling out to me.
The mundane soldier scoffed.
Ain't no way you are more drunk than me. Aren't you awakened supposed to be stupidly tough? Though, I thought I heard him too. Weird.
Sonny sighed.
That's because I'm standing right behind you.
Both of them slowly turned around and stared at him for a few moments. Then sincere smiles suddenly appeared on their faces.
Captain!
Sir, you're here too.
He rolled his eyes, then came closer and leaned on the parapet beside them.
Yes, I'm here too.
After the caravan reached the city, the soldiers and awakened he had led were absorbed back into the First Army and sent to reinforce the garrison. He had met a few here and there during the siege, but largely Sonny had no idea what had happened to them. It was strange to see Gear and Corinne again. He studied them for a bit, then asked,
The two of you did not board the ship?
Sergeant Gear hesitated, then shrugged relaxedly.
No. It just feels weird to leave all these people behind and run away. Actually, pretty much no one I know went and took a spot for themselves. Most of us First Army grunts are staying. It's like we all made a weird suicide pact.
Corinne pulled the flask out of his hand and smiled.
It's all right, though, actually. I feel like I was supposed to die in Erebus Field. That would have been sad.
She took a big gulp and sighed with pleasure.
Because everyone there died. But here, we already made sure that 170 million people escaped. By tomorrow, it's going to be 180. That's a lot of people. That's a job well done, if you ask me. And if we manage to hold out for a day or two more, then that's going to be even better.
Gear nodded.
That is the reason why we were sent here in the first place, isn't it? To make sure that these people escape. So saving ourselves at their expense just feels weird. That's all.
Sonny studied them for a few moments, remaining silent. Then he sighed.
I guess I feel the same way. Plus, I really hate losing as well.
Corinne and Gear looked at him with complicated expressions.
Sir, you're staying too?
Sonny smiled slightly.
Yeah, but don't get me wrong. I'm not planning on dying heroically. Unlike some people, I haven't given up on giving that beast a good fight.
The two soldiers were quiet for a bit. Then Gear suddenly laughed.
Good. That's good. Hell, now that I know that you're going to be with us too, sir, I am starting to feel that maybe there's still a chance. We already killed one Titan, didn't we? What's one more?
Corinne lingered for a moment, then offered the flask to Sonny and patted the mundane soldier on the shoulder.
Sure, Gear. Sure. It's just a corrupted Titan. Let's kill it. Why not?
Sonny received the flask and took a sip of something bitter, flavorful, and absolutely searing. He grimaced and coughed, feeling his eyes turn wet with tears.
Gods, what the hell are they drinking?
After a while, when he regained his ability to speak again, Sonny wiped his eyes and passed the flask back to Corinne. Feeling a pleasant warmth spread through his body, He said,
"Yeah, you're right. It's just a corrupted Titan."
It was already morning by the time Sonny made his way to the dormitory tower where Professor Opal was staying. The cold had gotten even more oppressive, and the wind was like a sharp knife that cut ruthlessly against his skin. It was rather strange. Soon after the news of the winter beast's inevitable attack spread through the city, the whole population seemed to have gone mad. Fear, panic, and desperation were like wildfire that spread through the siege capital, throwing it into utter chaos. For a while, it was as though Falcon Scott had turned into a wounded, frenzied beast. But now, a strange calmness permeated the snow-covered streets. Even near the port, the mob had become meek and docile. A few more ships arrived and a few more millions of people were taken away. The rest either surrendered themselves to fate or gave up completely. As soon as they let go of hope, their fear disappeared. Their panic subsided too. Sonny walked through the city. He saw different people coping with the merciless reality of the situation in different ways. Some seemed numb and lethargic. Some seemed serene and at peace. Everyone found solace in their way. He even saw groups of people climb to the roofs of the highest buildings, carrying chairs, portable heaters, and food. They were going to watch the arrival of the Titan and meet their ends together. Others were trying to get as deep underground as they could. A siege capital like Falcon Scott had plenty of durable subterranean shelters. However, if anyone thought that they could hide from the approaching doom there, they were sorely mistaken. No amount of frozen soil and layers of mundane defenses were going to stop a corrupted Titan. There had been shelters in Erebus Field too, but no one who entered them survived. And Goliath was in no way a match for the winter beast. As for Sonny himself, he had not given up yet. He still had some will to fight left in him. He had spent these hours trying to come up with a way to, if not defeat the abominable horror, then at least tie down and stall it. Sonny saw no way to win, no matter how hard he looked. The enemy was just too strong, and his bag of tricks was all but empty. There was no time to prepare anything, and even if there were, he was not sure that he would have been able to pull another miracle out of thin air. Killing Goliath was already an astonishing feat. In the past, before the transcendence of the first saints, it had taken all of Clan Valor decades to slay a fallen Titan. But Sonny destroyed the dreadful stone colossus in a single second. If he had been a couple of seconds slower, the city would have probably already been destroyed. That was how terrifying the Titans were. The further one walked on the road of ascendance, or corruption, the greater the distance between individual steps. There was a vast chasm between a terror and a Titan, and an even more boundless abyss between a fallen and a corrupted one. Sonny had not come up with a single good idea. His strength was insufficient, and there was no one stronger around to borrow it from.
"Is it hopeless?"
he questioned. Despite it all, he was reluctant to accept that fact, and yet a shadow of doubt was weighing on his heart. As Sonny was approaching the dormitory tower, his thoughts wandered to Gear and Corinne. His mood turned dark, and he remembered all the people he had brought to Falcon Scott and how much effort had gone into preserving their lives. Where were they now? The nameless sleeper, the kid who had called him uncle once, the brave soldier who had lost his arm to the devouring cloud. Had they been evacuated? Or were they still out there somewhere? Within the doomed city, most of the 200 million people had already been evacuated, so the chances of that weren't high. Standing in front of the entrance to the dormitory, he looked at the piles of snow on both sides of it. The man who had been so happy to give him a sandwich, was he and his wife safe? And countless others. With a deep sigh, Sonny entered the tower and made his way to Professor Opal's apartment. The old man met him with a calm smile.
"Master Sunless, come in, come in."
By now, There was no one inside the apartment except for the old man. The two of them remained silent for a while. Eventually, Professor Obel sighed.
I wanted to thank you. Some time ago, I requested of you to not choose to save my life over someone else's. Back then, you didn't agree. I am glad that you changed your mind.
Sonny looked at the old man with a bleak expression. He remembered that conversation. Back then, he had foolishly proclaimed that he would not have to choose because he would simply save everyone he decided to save. Technically, Sonny had kept that promise. The convoy had made it to Falcon Scott, and although there were some casualties, he never ended up having to put Professor Obel's life over that of other people. Who could have known that their woes would only grow more calamitous after reaching the distant siege capital? Sonny pursed his lips, and then said in an even tone,
I'm not going to lie, Professor. I am unhappy with your decision. After all the effort I've put into keeping you alive, you still choose to stay. It makes me feel as though all those struggles of mine were meaningless.
They had not been, of course. Tens of thousands of people, and maybe even millions, were alive because of what Sonny had done. But millions of people were faceless. To him, Professor Obel had long become somewhat of a personification of all the mundane humans the First Army was meant to save. Him and Beth. The old man smiled wistfully.
I knew that you would feel that way. People who are as principled as you, young man, are a rare breed. They can't help but feel responsible for the entire world. However, the world is too vast, Major Sunless. You can't defeat it all by yourself. And you shouldn't be forced to either.
Sonny looked at him with surprise.
Now that is very amusing.
He couldn't help but snort.
Principled? Me? Professor, you are deeply mistaken. I have no principles to speak of. I am just stubborn, spiteful, and a little bit mad. That's all there is to me.
The old man laughed.
If you say so, young man. Anyway, you must be busy. I won't keep you. However, I do have one last favor to ask. Would you mind escorting me to the communication array? My work schedule is technically suspended, but a bunch of us old engineers decided to gather there. Who knows? Maybe we'll even manage to restore function to the whole thing. In any case, it will be an extremely interesting problem to solve. I already have a few ideas.
Sonny stared at him for a few moments, then silently nodded. Together, they left the dormitory tower and ventured through the streets of Falcon Scott, chatting idly as they did. Time seemed to slow down a little. Nevertheless, they eventually reached the base of the communication array complex, where a dozen or so old men and women were standing, waiting for latecomers to arrive. Some of them waved to Professor Obel, calling out to him with boisterous voices. The old man waved in response, then turned to Sonny and smiled.
We're here. Thank you very much, young man, for everything.
Sonny felt as though a lump was stuck in his throat. He lingered for a few moments, then forced out a few words.
Don't mention it. And thank you too, Professor. Please, stay safe.
Professor Obel patted him on the shoulder.
You must survive, Major. Don't hesitate to save yourself when the time comes. Farewell.
With that, he smiled one last time, then turned away and headed to the other old engineers. They welcomed him with friendly greetings. Sonny remained motionless for a while, then turned away too.
Damnation.
Gritting his teeth, he shivered in the cold and started walking. The shadow weighing on his heart had become heavier. He found his soldiers calmly preparing for the nearing, and most likely their last, battle. Sonny had chosen the members of his cohort based on their mental resilience, but even still, he was surprised and slightly disturbed by how nonchalant all three seemed. Samara had lost her rifle, but was now in possession of Kim's carbine. She was sitting on an alloy crate, silently charging one bullet after another with essence. Bell was sharpening his sword, with a vague smile on his face. Memories did not need to be sharpened, but the swordsman had a habit of doing so anyway. Dorn had been wounded by the scavenger. The deep cut on his chest had already been dealt with by an awakened healer, but he was yet to fully recover. The giant man was moving his shoulder through a set of stretching exercises, wincing from time to time. His sledgehammer was nearby, its handle leaning against the wall. When Sonny entered, the three awakened glanced his way and saluted.
"What's the news, sir?"
He shook his head.
No news yet. If we're lucky, the bastard will show up tomorrow. If we're not, it'll be here today.
Sonny remained silent for a few moments, then added,
In any case, we have to deal with the blizzard first. Keep those charms I gave you. Protection against cold is going to play a big role when the winter beast comes.
Sonny possessed the memory of ice, but he had also created lesser versions of the Ascended charm for his soldiers. Those memories were not as potent, but also required much less essence to sustain the enchantments. They nodded, summoning the artificial charms. Looking at his soldiers, Sonny couldn't help but feel a hint of fear. He had only known these people for a few months, but they had gone through a lifetime of struggles together. Even if he wasn't responsible for their lives, he would still have been fiercely reluctant to see them die. Bell, Dorn, Samara, they were admirable warriors each. More importantly, they were his people. Sonny sighed.
You just had to go and stay, huh?
He had been fully prepared to have Neve load the whole cohort on the ship, but the three awakened silently refused. Staying in Falcon Scott was their choice. Bell looked at him and grinned.
Sure, sir. That's our job.
Samara simply nodded, choosing not to say anything in her usual manner. Dorn chuckled.
"We did. But aren't you here too, Major?"
Sonny winced. Of course it wasn't the same. He was an Ascended, and one ridiculously hard to kill on top of that. His soldiers, however, were merely awakened. They were not nearly as resilient.
Yeah, I am.
Bell put his sword away, the smile slowly disappearing from his face. The swordsman remained silent for a few moments, looking at him with an uncharacteristically serious expression. A heavy atmosphere settled in the barracks room. Eventually, he said,
There is something I wanted to ask you, though, sir. You don't have to answer, of course.
Sonny frowned.
What is it?
Bell hesitated for a bit, then asked thoughtfully,
There are rumors going around that you're dating Mongrel. But Mongrel, she is your echo. What's that all about?
Sonny stared at him speechless.
What the hell are you on about, fool? I'm not dating anyone.
The swordsman suddenly threw his head back and exploded with laughter.
I see.
Dorn gave him a disapproving look and let out an exasperated sigh.
That guy.
Sonny shook his head, suddenly feeling an urge to laugh too.
He's crazier than me. Gods. If you're done, Bell, let's discuss strategy.
Sometime later, Sonny walked outside to get some fresh air. The air was much cleaner in Antarctica after all. It would be a waste to remain inside all the time, even despite the cold. As Sonny stared at the distant sky, he suddenly noticed a black bird looking at him from a nearby roof. Then he heard the sound of approaching footsteps. "Sonny, there you are." Master Jet appeared from behind a corner and walked over to him, then stopped, her icy blue eyes full of coldness. That was even more chilling than the polar night. He looked at her, then smiled.
Here I am.
She sighed.
I sent all the information we have about the Winter Beast to your communicator. Did you read it?
He nodded. Sadly, there was little known about the Titan and its abilities. Even though St. Tyrus had spent months suppressing the creature, most of their drawn-out battle had not been a direct one. The Winter Beast had shown an eerie ability to control cold, snow, and wind. Since Skytide commanded the winds as well, their battlefield had been the sky above the Antarctic center itself. It was precisely because the Titan's most dreadful power had been continuously countered by St. Tyrus that no one knew its true extent. It had to be tremendous, though, considering that the mere presence of the creature was distorting communications across the entire region. All Sunny and Jet could do was make educated guesses. She hesitated.
Good then.
After that, both fell silent. Sunny looked at Soul Reaper, remembering the past. She was the first person he had met after surviving the first nightmare. Back then, Jet looked like an unreachable goddess to him. Seeing her cold beauty, he was stunned. Luckily, she promptly slapped some sense back into him. After that, Master Jet was always in the background of his life, arguably saving it on more than one occasion with her advice and slightly jaded wisdom. And now, they were equals. It was funny the two of them had only met a few years ago, but Sunny felt as though he had known her all his life. Maybe because those years felt like several lifetimes. He sighed, then suddenly asked,
Master Jet, I've always wanted to ask, why did you join the government? Considering your abilities and character, the Legacy clans probably showered you with offers, and incredible ones at that. Well, you must have received a special strategic asset designation as well.
They had briefly talked about it in the past, but Sunny always felt that he did not know the full truth. Soul Reaper looked at him with a surprised expression.
What? Where did all this come from?
He chuckled.
Just curious, that's all.
Jet remained silent for a bit, then scoffed.
Huh. Well, all right. But you are overestimating me. A special strategic asset. I wasn't even designated as a simple strategic asset. Sure, my aspect was a dangerous and unique one, but other than that, I was completely unremarkable. I was foolish and timid, and unsure of myself too. It was only much later, after being beaten by life over and over again, that I got rid of some of my foolishness and bloomed into this awesome and incomparably majestic figure you see in front of yourself today. Satisfied?
Sunny smiled.
I guess.
After a few moments of silence, he asked,
Do you regret it, though? The path that you took?
She looked away, a thoughtful expression appearing on her face. Master Jet pondered his question for a bit, then shrugged. Her voice was calm.
Ours is a bitter life, Sunny. From the outskirts of NQSC to here, it has often been bitter, and only rarely sweet. A life like that would be a waste, to make it taste more bitter still with regret. So now, I might be unsatisfied with many things, but I would never waste my time on regret.
Jet looked at him and raised a brow.
Why? Are you feeling regretful about something?
Sunny laughed.
Honestly, right now, I'm regretting pretty much every single decision I've made in my life.
She stared at him blankly, then rolled her eyes.
Well, get over it. We have a Titan to fight.
And so they did. The temperature continued to plunge, and the winds grew more and more frenzied, howling through the streets of the siege capital like hungry wolves. Faster than everyone had hoped, only a few short hours later, the Winter Beast had reached Falcon Scott. The remains of the field army sent to the Antarctic Center gathered in a formation after marching across the giant crater. The hill, like the stone corpse of the fallen Titan Goliath, the pit, created by the enormous explosion, and the city, with millions of defenseless humans sheltering inside, were now behind them. In front of them was a vast field of snow and the towering peaks of the mountains. There were around 20,000 mundane soldiers, some of them piloting the mighty war platforms, and 1,000 or so awakened gathered in front of the crater. Just like Gear had said, very few members of the First Army had used the priority right to be evacuated ahead of civilians. Most had remained and were now preparing to face a dreadful foe, the Winter Beast. The plan of battle was rather simple. The creature's physical body was rumored to be hidden at the heart of the blizzard, protected by hurricane winds and murderous cold. To prevent it from reaching the siege capital, the army was going to advance into the snowstorm and confront the Titan. Neither mundane soldiers nor the awakened had any hope of actually damaging a corrupted nightmare creature. Luckily, an abomination that mostly relied on unnatural powers to kill its prey could not be too formidable in a physical confrontation. The few masters who still remained with the army had a good chance of wounding or even slaying it if they could get close enough. The role of the soldiers and the awakened was to bury the Titan under their bodies and distract it, hopefully allowing the Ascended to strike. No one knew if the plan had even a theoretical chance of working, but it was their best chance. Aside from Sunny and Jet, 2 more masters had both survived the previous weeks of the siege and chosen to stay and fight. The 4 of them were spread across the formation, each commanding one of the 4 brigades. Nightmare was still slumbering because of the wounds he had received during the previous battle, but Saint, maybe due to the Mantle of Darkness, had already recovered. However, Sunny did not summon her yet. He waited to keep his strongest weapon at hand in case things went wrong. If the army was unsuccessful in their desperate gamble to breach the wall of the blizzard, he would send one of his shadows ahead to allow the taciturn knight to emerge from it, near the Titan, and engage the abomination in battle. That was his last resort. Even still, Sunny did not know if Saint would be able to do anything. That was the main problem. None of them knew anything for sure. The Winter Beast was just too unknown and mysterious. Chances were every single one of them would die long before catching a glimpse of the Titan's true body.
"Curse that fiend,"
he muttered. Sunny was standing in the front of the brigade of grim-faced soldiers who were now under his nominal command. The members of his cohort were right behind him, and behind them were the rest of the awakened. The mundane soldiers were at the back of the column, comprising most of it. All of them were looking ahead, struggling against the cruel winds. In front of them, a cloud of snow was descending from the mountains, slowly blotting out the sky. It was like a swirling white wall was slowly erasing the world. With each second, the winds were growing stronger and stronger, and the terrible cold was becoming more unbearable. The blizzard was coming. Sunny sighed, then looked over his shoulder.
"Get ready!"
Without Kim, the members of his cohort lost the ability to borrow his sight. Each of them had summoned a luminous memory, and so had the rest of the awakened in the brigade. The mundane soldiers, too, were equipped with various light-producing devices. Beams of powerful spotlights shot into the darkness from the shoulders of the towering MWPs. The brigade appeared like a river of light in the middle of a sea of darkness. The harrowing snowstorm was getting closer and closer.
"Advance!"
Sunny took the first step forward, and the soldiers followed. The war platforms prepared their flamethrowers. Since the Titan's most fearsome weapon was cold, Today, these armaments were more valuable for their ability to create heat, not for their destructive potential. On both sides of the brigade, 2 more rivers of light flowed forward. One commanded by Soul Reaper Jet, one by an Ascended that Sunny had met a few times, but did not know. A few moments later, the snow was upon them. Sunny shivered, feeling a merciless chill permeate his body. Even with his elemental resistance and the help of the memory of ice, he was shocked by how ferocious the cold was. He could only imagine how terrible it was for the rest of the soldiers. It had never been the same the previous time Sunny encountered the wandering blizzard. Now that St. Tyrus was not suppressing the winter beast, it had fully unleashed its power, causing the world itself to become its tool. This snowstorm was not an after effect of the Titan's presence on the landmass either. It was directly created by the frozen horror. The snowstorm itself was a horror. It was as much a part of the winter beast as the physical body, hidden in the heart of the blizzard was. In that regard, the corrupted Titan was much closer to the dark sea of the Forgotten Shore than it was to a simpler creature like Goliath. For a moment, Sunny wondered if there was something secretly hidden at the heart of the cursed sea as well.
Flamethrowers!
The MWPs walking at the sides of the column extended their arms, sending long streams of fire crisscrossing above the formation. It was as though a flaming cage was created around the brigade. For a few moments, the cold receded slightly. The billowing clouds of snow were instantly melted, and drops of water rained down on the shivering humans. For as long as the war platforms had fuel to keep the flames burning, the army still had a chance to reach the depths of the unnatural snowstorm. However, they had not burned for long. It was all a gamble. A dire, dangerous, deadly gamble the soldiers of the First Army were betting their lives against the winter beast without even knowing if they would be able to reach it, let alone hurt it. They might have made that gamble out of desperation, but they had also made it out of necessity. All of them had received a chance to leave, and all of them turned it down. Some had done it due to their sense of duty, camaraderie, or misguided bravery. Some had simply grown numb to the horrors of war. As for Sunny himself, he was not sure what had led him here. He had come to this broken land in search of power, but that desirous quest seemed so childish now. Antarctica had put a lot of things in perspective. However, this shift of perspective only made things less clear instead of revealing the truth. All he knew was that he felt fiercely reluctant to leave the job unfinished, and that he did not want to fail the soldiers who had entrusted him with their lives. Sunny had never wanted to be in charge of anyone, but now that he was, their hopes and desires weighed on him like chains. Strangely, though, he did not want to refuse that burden. He felt quite protective of it. Maybe that was what Master Jet had meant when she said that no one was free in this world. Regardless of the reason, Sunny felt a frantic hope burning in his chest as he marched into the blizzard.
Come on, we can do it.
Behind him, the column of shivering soldiers stubbornly moved forward inside a cage of flames. The infantrymen were all encased in suits of powered armor, which were all hermetic and insulated, capable of withstanding the most hazardous environments. The awakened were all much tougher, and many of them possessed protective memories on top of that. And yet, they were all suffering from the terrifying cold. It was just too insidious, finding a way to pass through all forms of defense. Even Sunny felt miserable because of the snowstorm. Much worse, the cold was getting worse and worse the deeper into the blizzard they walked. They had to find the true body of the winter beast soon.
That cold, there's something wrong about it. It doesn't feel like a natural elemental force.
Even his thoughts felt slow and frigid. But there was no way back for them now. All that Sunny could do was march forward and endure. hoping that he and his soldiers would be able to reach the heart of the blizzard. The fire produced by the MWPs helped alleviate the cold to a certain extent, but then, slowly, the heat of the furious flames started to feel less and less substantial. The flamethrowers were still spouting long streams of burning fuel, but it was as though the fire itself had been robbed of its warmth. How could a fire be cold? Sonny did not know, but he felt as though the flames now contained no heat whatsoever. They were like predators that had lost all their teeth.
Curse it.
He glanced back, seeing a few of the mundane soldiers staggering as they walked, then gritted his teeth and continued to move forward. The snowstorm could not be too vast. They had to be getting closer to its center. All they had to do was endure a little longer. Suppressing a hint of fear, Sonny sent his shadows to scout ahead. As soon as his body lost its support, the cold assaulted it with renewed strength. He cursed quietly and concentrated on resisting the furious blows of the hurricane winds. Behind him, the awakened and the mundane soldiers were shielding their faces and leaning forward to withstand the force of the storm. Even the towering war platforms were struggling to keep their balance. They had great mass, but also a much larger surface for the wind to attack. The pilots controlled their lumbering machines with intricate skill, keeping them upright and moving forward. The shadows flew into the storm. Even though it was almost impossible to see through the raging snow, they had other ways to perceive the world. Sonny hoped that at least one of them would be able to discover the true body of the winter beast. After all, searching for it was not hard. All he had to do was follow to where the cold was most dreadful. The closer one got to the heart of the blizzard, the more terrible the unnatural cold would become. And indeed, his shadows were able to discover the right direction soon. They all failed to reach the eye of the storm, though. Sonny felt a little shaken when he realized that. Further into the blizzard, even the shadows started suffering from the merciless cold. It made no sense, since shadows were incorporeal beings, but it was nevertheless true. Once they flew sufficiently deep into the snowstorm, the power of the winter beast seemed to transcend logic and reason. It was capable of freezing even those things that should have been incapable of being frozen.
How can it?
To his horror, Sonny realized that the frigid slowness of his thoughts was also not just his imagination. If the corrupted Titan was capable of affecting shadows with its powers, why wouldn't it be able to affect minds? Nothing within the winter beast's snowy domain could avoid being pervaded by its power. Recalling the shadows, Sonny shuddered and continued to walk in the direction they had discovered. Every step he took felt heavier than the last. Behind him, a soldier fell to the ground. Others tried to help the soldier stand up, but it was no use. The man was not moving. His comrades had no choice but to abandon their futile attempts. The column flowed past the motionless figure, and soon it was swallowed by the haze of the blizzard, disappearing from view. Not long after that, someone else dropped down. Sonny felt dread settle in his heart.
No, we need to keep going. I refuse to give up. I refuse to believe that the abomination's power cannot be broken.
He continued to walk with an ugly expression on his face, leaning low to resist the shattering wind. Soon, more people fell into the snow. Sonny could feel their shadows turn lifeless in the distance. Every death cut him like a knife. It was only the mundane soldiers at first. Then, one of the MWPs staggered and froze, depowering. A moment later, a powerful squall crashed into it, making the towering machine sway and collapse. Eventually, even the weakest of the awakened started dying. And then the strongest of them. Engrossed by grim fearlessness and dogged determination, the brigade continued to struggle forward. The other brigades were advancing into the blizzard by its side, too. However, their rate of progress was becoming slower and slower. The closer they got to the heart of the snowstorm, the more murderous the cold became. The stronger the winds grew, and the harder it was to make even a single step forward. It felt as though an irresistible force was pushing Sonny back, and at the same time trying to sap him of his very life, battering his body with blades of wind and ice.
Damn it! Damn it!
At first, a soldier or two would fall every minute. Then, a new body would fall into the embrace of the snow almost every second. Sonny felt a vast, maddening anguish and a deep, biting reluctance and fear. Not for himself, but for the mission. But then, he became scared for himself, too. At some point, Sonny realized that because of the diabolical cold that permeated his mind, he could no longer feel his dream realm anchor. It still existed there, somewhere, but it was as though the mystical connection was distorted by a hazy wall of snow. Sonny could not sense the anchor and could not reach for it. He had nowhere to run, just like the rest of his soldiers.
Are we going to lose just like that?
The thought filled him with indescribable anger and grief. He could tell that they were getting closer to the heart of the blizzard. They were not too far away now, but the snowstorm had become just too calamitous. Sonny had lost count of how many soldiers he had lost. In fact, his senses, even the shadow sense, were slowly failing him. He could not see too far, and he could not perceive too far. The world had narrowed down to a hazy sphere of 12 meters, while everything else was obscured by snow. In that sphere, there were only a few awakened. As far as he knew, everyone else might have already succumbed to the ruthless cold.
It can't be like this. It can't be, damn it!
In his heart, Sonny would have been able to accept if they had reached the true body of the winter beast, but failed to defeat it. But the idea of being wiped out without even making it to the eye of the storm was enough to drive him insane.
Damn it, damn it, damn it!
And with each second, still the cold was growing more harrowing. But in the end, that was exactly what happened. Eventually, still surrounded by the wall of howling snow, Sonny realized that he could hardly make even a single step forward. He had lost sight of the brigade and did not know if any of his soldiers were still alive. There were only 3 awakened beside him: Belle, Dorn, and Samara. And with each second, still the cold was growing more harrowing. He closed his eyes.
Admit it.
Sonny hesitated, staring into the blizzard.
Admit it. You lost.
He shivered.
You fool. What else did you expect would happen?
It was almost as if the Sin of Solace was talking to him. But no, those were only his own thoughts. He had not even summoned the Jade Sword yet. His own thoughts were much more damning. Sonny let out a soft sigh, then turned around and looked at his soldiers. The members of his cohort were standing close to each other, bits of ice covering their hair. Their luminous memories had grown dim and weak, and their lips were blue. Their eyes, however, were much more calm than his own. Sonny studied their faces for a few moments, trying to come up with a solid thought. Eventually, he simply whispered, "I'm sorry." Belle smiled with the corner of his mouth, then slightly shook his head. That action alone seemed to take something out of him. The swordsman swayed slightly. Samara reached out to support him, and he placed a hand on her shoulder, gripping it tightly. Dorn struggled a little and turned to face them. He gave his fellow awakened a warm nod, then kept looking at them without saying anything. Maybe he couldn't. Sonny remained motionless, watching. He watched them slowly grow still, and then he watched as the spark of life was gradually extinguished inside them. Samara was first, and then Dorn. Belle was the last to go. Only when their shadows had turned lifeless and empty did Sonny allow himself to dissipate into the darkness, escaping the murderous cold. In the embrace of the shadows, the power of the winter beast was not nearly as overwhelming. It could still reach here somehow, but in a weakened state. Sonny howled with sorrow and fury as he flew deeper into the blizzard. Even if everything was lost, he still wanted to try and reach the wretched abomination. He wanted to hurt, break, and kill it. But he failed. Even if the cold was not as terrifying in the shadows, it was still there. And the closer Sonny got to the heart of the blizzard, the more annihilating the cold became. He persisted forward, feeling his very soul freeze and start to grow lifeless, dying. For a time, he almost made it. Eventually, though, Sonny had to turn back. He ran away. He ran away and hid himself, waiting for the snowstorm to pass. He survived. The winter beast came, and then it left. The last citadel of humanity in the Antarctic Center, Falcon Scott, had fallen to the chain of nightmares. The harrowing blizzard had swept through it, freezing the whole city solid and killing everyone inside. Sonny had heard that a long time ago, during the dark times, or maybe even before that, the whole of Antarctica was covered by ice. It had been a land of perpetual winter, cold and snow. After the corrupted Titan wiped out the last human settlement and retreated into the mountains, as if satisfied to be the sole sovereign of the region, the landscape looked just like that again. The city was drowning in snow. The buildings emerged from it, encased in ice. Below the cliffs, a large swath of the ocean was frozen as well. A gargantuan battleship was stuck in the ice, still anchored. The people aboard it, all dead. Everyone was dead, except for Sonny. His soldiers were dead. Millions of civilians were dead. Professor Obel was dead too. But he was alive, and not even wounded. Sonny had remained in the shadows for a long time, only emerging from them after his essence almost ran dry. And now, he was digging a grave. The earth itself was frozen solid, so his task was not an easy one. He had to summon the Sin of Solace and use the beautiful jade blade to dig. Sonny was standing in a shallow pit, deepening it. His movements were fast and purposeful. Angry tears were streaming down his face, turning into ice before falling to the ground. He was not alone either. A vague shape that looked a lot like him was sitting on the edge of the pit, staring at him somberly. It had his voice, too.
Look at you go.
Sonny gritted his teeth, ignoring the Sin of Solace. The cursed sword remained silent for a while, observing him. Eventually it asked,
So, did you find it? Conviction or whatever it was you've been searching for?
Sonny spared the vague shape a glance, then continued digging.
No, I didn't find crap.
He wiped his face with an elbow.
That's not true. I did find something. I found out that I was right all along.
Sonny plunged the sword into the frozen soil and laughed.
Faith, calling, conviction, all those lofty words. It's all rubbish. It's all meaningless. People like Anvil of Valor and Keysong have conviction, and that conviction helps them achieve greatness. Well, where are they? What good did they do? Where the hell were they, huh?
He lowered the sword and stared at the vague shape with fury in his eyes.
Those great people go around playing with their great conviction. Well, little people like us suffer and lose our little lives. But what's wrong with having small dreams? All I ever wanted was to live a good life and keep the people I care about safe. What's wrong with that? Why do I have to have a great goal and soaring ambition to be allowed to exist?
Sonny remained motionless for a moment, then returned to digging.
I'll tell you why. It's because those bastards made it so. That's the world they've built. They can pursue their convictions and trample on millions in the process, because there's no one to hold them responsible. They can have their little wars while ignoring the death toll, no matter how many people die. I hate it. I hate it!
Suddenly, he stopped, and then let out a small laugh.
Effie, she was wrong. Well, I can't blame her because she doesn't know Nephis as well as I do. From the outside, it might look like Neph draws power from conviction. And she does, too. But the truth is so much simpler. I mean, she told me herself.
Back on the Forgotten Shore, years ago, Sonny had asked Nephis why she wanted to destroy the spell, and her answer was very simple indeed. Because I hate it. Because she hated it. She was going to destroy the spell because she wanted to, and she wanted to destroy the spell because she hated it. That was all. Sonny laughed again, then shook his head.
Fool. I'm such a fool.
The vague shape sitting on the edge of the grave grinned.
Well, at least we agree on something.
Sonny continued to dig, thinking back on the past months. He had not found conviction. But in a sense, he also did.
I don't need it. I know what I value, and I know what I want. I might not be much, but it's enough. I am who I am, and who I am is enough. It's plenty.
He looked at the vague shape and made it disappear with a thought. Then, Sonny climbed out of the grave and looked at it. There were 3 graves beside that one. They all stared at Sonny like monuments to his failure. Slowly, he turned to the 4 corpses that lay on the ground a small distance away from the graves. After the winter beast left, he returned to collect the bodies of Belle, Dorn, and Samara. And then, not too far away, he had found the body of Master Jet as well. Sonny couldn't quite comprehend the fact that she was dead. She had always been there for him. She had been the first person to meet him after the first nightmare, and the one to guide him to the academy. She had been there when he returned from the Forgotten Shore, and from the Kingdom of Hope, too. She had even helped him purchase his home. Soul Reaper had been his mentor, comrade, and friend. For him, she was synonymous with competence and power, and perseverance. If a girl from the outskirts could rise so high, then why couldn't he? And now, she was dead. Sonny couldn't believe it, but there was no denying it. Her lifeless body was right there in front of him, unmoving and still. Her beautiful blue eyes were now glassy and hollow. Her lips were never going to curve into a smile again. Soul Reaper Jet was gone. Sonny's heart was empty.
Right.
He remained motionless for a while, then walked over to Belle and carried him to the first grave. Then, silently, he repeated the same process with Samara and Dorn. Master Jet was the last, but he couldn't bring himself to approach her body for a long time. Eventually, though, it had to be done. Feeling as though he was dead himself, Sonny approached Jet's corpse and then leaned down to grab it. The corpse stared at him with glassy eyes and said hoarsely, "Kindly unhand me." Sonny sighed.
Don't worry, Master Jet. I'm going to bury you while there are no nightmare creatures around. Yet. But they will come eventually. You wouldn't want to be eaten, would you? I surely don't.
The corpse remained silent for a few moments.
"Have you lost your mind, Sonny? Put me the hell down."
He nodded.
Yes, I did lose my mind a little, that's true.
The corpse of Soul Reaper Jet continued to stare at him.
I should probably close her eyes.
"Do you need me to slap you again? Snap out of it, damn it!"
A small frown appeared on Sonny's face. Then he suddenly dropped the corpse and flinched back, falling on his butt.
What? Master Jet, you're alive?
The corpse remained motionless on the ground. After a short pause, it said in a dull, hoarse, coarse voice,
"No, I am dead."
Sonny stared at it dumbfounded. Suddenly, the corpse let out a grating, hissing sound. It was trying to laugh.
"I've been dead this whole time. It's my flaw. You are dead. But as long as I keep killing things and absorbing their essence, I can at least maintain a semblance of life. If I don't, I'll be truly destroyed."
She struggled to turn her head and looked at him with dead, glassy eyes.
"That was the real reason I joined the government all those years ago. I knew that I'd always have things to kill if I did. Now, Sonny, damn it. Can you help me sit up?"
He slowly rose to his feet, took a few shaky steps forward, and pulled her up to a sitting position. Then, he blinked a couple of times and said,
"So that was why you told me that you couldn't die in Antarctica. Because you were never alive to begin with."
Soul Reaper struggled for a few moments, and then took a labored breath. The first one since he had found her in the snowfield outside the city.
"Yes, it was a figure of speech."
Both of them remained quiet for a while, not knowing what to say. Then Jet suddenly turned her head. Her eyes glistened a little.
"Sonny, look there."
He turned around, not knowing what she wanted him to see. Nothing seemed to have changed. The graves, the snow, and the frozen buildings of the destroyed city were all the same. However, far away, a thin line of pale lilac appeared above the horizon, breaking the rain of cold darkness. Soul Reaper tried to smile, but failed.
"The sun is rising. The night is over." "Sonny, come here. I'll only kill you a little."
"Get the hell away from me, you demented zombie!"
Sonny took a few steps back, easily avoiding the grasp of the shambling corpse of Master Jet. Fortunately, she was not too fast. In fact, she could barely crawl. Her nails scratched powerlessly against the alloy, and Soul Reaper let out a hoarse, disappointed hiss.
"Damn it."
Sonny shook his head. Despite Jet's weakened state, avoiding her clutches was a tiresome task, mostly because there was nowhere really for him to run. Currently, the two of them were trapped on an alloy raft that was drifting slowly across the strait between the Antarctic center and the vast landmass to the east. When Jet lost control of herself, all Sonny could do was endlessly circle the raft and wait for her to come to her senses.
"Come here, Sonny. I won't bite."
He gave her a dark look, then picked up his chair, walked over to the other end of their improvised vessel, and calmly sat down. The length of the raft was no more than 10 meters, but for Soul Reaper, that was a vast distance right now. She stared at him for a while, then gave up and rolled on her back with a curse, looking at the sky with a resigned expression. When Jet remained still, she really looked like a corpse. And technically she was, But at least in this cold, she was not a rotting corpse. One had to count their blessings. Unlike the souls of all other awakened, hers was not able to generate essence on its own. Worse than that, her soul core was shattered and constantly leaked what little essence she had left. Once the essence completely ran out, Soul Reaper would truly and forever perish. The only way for her to survive was to continuously kill living beings and absorb their soul essence. That was actually Jet's sleeper ability. Her awakened ability allowed her to bypass all forms of physical defense and strike directly at the souls of her enemies, which was where her fearsome nickname, Soul Reaper, had come from. Her ascended ability was to slowly absorb shards of broken soul cores from those she had killed to build up and strengthen her own, both in terms of size and capacity. It also removed the natural limit of essence infusion that the flesh of most living beings had, allowing Jet to oversaturate her body with essence and achieve truly superb levels of strength, speed, and resilience. Hers was a supreme aspect. Sadly, right now, Jet had no essence to spare on strengthening her body. She barely had enough to keep it from collapsing entirely, and even that last reserve was slowly running out. Things had not gone well for them after the destruction of Falcon Scott. Even after the Winter Beast retreated into the depths of the Antarctic Center, its dire influence remained. Neither Sunny nor Jet had been able to access their Dream Realm anchors, which meant that they could not escape from the waking world. Eventually, the two of them had been left with only one choice: try and brave the Strait. Actually, there was no need for them to even reach East Antarctica. All they had to do was sail far enough into the ocean to leave the area of influence of the corrupted Titan, which would allow both to return to the Dream Realm. That would still be dangerous, but not as dangerous as remaining in the Winter Beast's frozen realm. There were no ships coming, and no seaworthy vessels left intact in Falcon Scott. In the end, Sunny had been forced to improvise. The alloy raft they were currently drifting on was not just a random sheet of light alloy, it was actually the covetous coffer. That memory of his possessed an enchantment called Mendacious Coffer, which allowed it to mimic the forms of inanimate objects. Additionally, the size and intricacy of the simulacrum were dependent on Sunny's shadow core capacity. By now, he was very close to becoming an ascended tyrant, so obviously that capacity was much greater than when he had first acquired the coffer. So Sunny had turned it into a raft. It was much larger than the alloy chest the coffer usually looked like, at the expense of complexity. Even better, the locomotive chiffonier enchantment allowed the raft to propel itself forward at a modest speed. Most importantly, though, the covetous coffer was an ascended memory of the fourth tier, and as such, it was tremendously more durable than even the strongest alloy would have been. If something attacked them from below, which had already happened a few times, the raft was not going to be destroyed unless the attacking nightmare creature happened to be truly terrifying. Sunny and Jet had ventured into the strait on top of the covetous coffer, hoping to leave the Winter Beast's area of influence in about a day, and they had. Sadly, their situation did not really improve after that. As it turned out, there were numerous nightmare gates hidden below the cold waters of the ocean here. Perhaps there were too many, or perhaps their luck had just been truly atrocious, but even now, a week later, Sunny and Jet had yet to encounter a place where the call of nightmare would not instantly whisk them away if they tried to leave for the Dream Realm. At this point, it would be easier for them to actually reach East Antarctica. They had made it 2/3 of the way already. The mighty battleships of the government fleet were able to make the trip in a day or two, but the covetous coffer was much slower, so it was going to take them a few more days to make landfall. Sunny did not feel too much pressure. Saint was standing guard with Morgan's warbow in her hands, warding off most of the sea creatures. Sunny and Saint were capable of dealing with almost every normal threat. If something they could not deal with were to attack from the depths, he could use a combination of memories to take flight. If they were attacked in the skies, he could dive deep into the ocean. The only problem he had was that Jet would periodically lose her mind and half-heartedly try to kill him. Sitting in his luxurious chair, Sonny threw a look at Soul Reaper's unmoving corpse and sighed.
Damnation.
Sonny was not too worried about being able to reach East Antarctica unless something truly harrowing rose from the depths of the ocean to devour them. He was certain of his ability to either kill or escape it. However, he was worried about Jet. A week ago, she had been weak, but not nearly as weak as she was now. Her mental state was also getting worse. He knew that Soul Reaper had been intentionally starving her body of essence in order to conserve as much of it as possible, but still. Sonny did not know how much longer she would last. Right now, she was not even able to afford summoning a memory. Every drop of essence counted, and there was very little of it left in her shattered soul core, which presented a problem. Saint was capable of killing most nightmare creatures that attacked them with her bow, and Sonny was not far behind her in terms of lethality. However, Jet was in no condition to kill anything. As he considered his options, the corpse stirred, then started laboriously crawling in his direction again, demented lights burning in its glassy blue eyes.
Come here. Come here.
Sonny stared at her with distaste, then shook his head and stood up. His shadow sense spread outward, encompassing as much of the world as he could perceive. He remained motionless for a while, allowing the corpse to draw dangerously close. Jet's hollow eyes glinted.
Got you.
Before she could grab his shin, however, Sonny sighed and dove off the edge of the raft, disappearing under the cold water. The graceless dusk dissipated into dancing threads of black silk. Jet seemed startled by his disappearance. She fruitlessly clawed at the surface of the raft a couple of times, then grew still.
He's gone.
A hoarse sigh escaped from her bluish lips. She didn't inhale after that. By now, even breathing was a chore. She didn't really need to anyway. The corpse remained motionless for a long time. Eventually, a black bird landed on the raft, hopped over to the corpse, and stared at it curiously. A few moments later, the crow tried to peck one of the glassy eyes out. Jet blinked.
You stop that, crow, or I'm going to make you into a soup.
The bird hurriedly jumped away, seemingly nervous.
Soup! Soup! Ha!
Its voice sounded indignant. Soul Reaper looked at the bird silently, then rasped,
Did you find land?
The crow spread its wings and waved them a couple of times.
Ha! Land! Land!
The corpse tried to smile, which looked quite disturbing. Even Saint spared it an indifferent glance.
How far is it?
The bird ruffled its feathers and made another hop back.
Far! Far!
Jet gritted her teeth.
I know that it's far, you stupid bird. How far?
The echo simply stared at her in confusion. After a couple of seconds, it cawed proudly.
How? How?
Soul Reaper hissed, then hit her head against the alloy surface of the raft a couple of times.
God damn it!
After that small outburst, she didn't say anything else, remaining still and unmoving. The raft swayed gently on the waves. Below the raft, hundreds of small metallic feet were furiously paddling the cold water. On top of it, a living statue, a talking corpse, and a small black bird were silently waiting. Sometime later, the water behind the raft suddenly boiled, and a young man with silky black hair and alabaster skin emerged from it, dragging something in a stranglehold. A terrifying creature with long tentacles that were as wide as a man's thigh was struggling furiously, trying to free itself. Its spongy flesh was awash with inky black blood.
Stop fighting, you bastard!
Sonny gritted his teeth and ignored a tentacle that was wrapped around his neck, exerting enough pressure on it to crush an armored vehicle. Using one hand, he swam toward the raft, climbed aboard, and dragged the nightmare creature with him. Saint silently moved to the opposite side of the coffer, so that the weight of the abomination did not make it capsize. The crow flew up and landed on her shoulder, staring at the monstrous creature with apprehension. Sonny pressed the abomination down and barked.
Stay still!
He was rather angry. Yes, he and Saint were enough to slay most of the nightmare creatures that would attack them, either from underwater or from the sky. However, capturing one alive was a whole different level of trouble.
Jet, get in here!
Soul Reaper slowly gathered her limbs and then sluggishly tried to stand up. After a few tries, she succeeded and stood there for a moment, swaying. Sonny summoned the cruel sight and tossed it to her, using his knee to press the abomination into the alloy. Soul Reaper caught the spear and used its shaft to help herself stay upright. He held the nightmare creature down and cursed.
Hurry the hell up! That thing is really strong!
Not to mention that it had more limbs than he did. Immobilizing it was a miserable task. Jet shambled over, then spun the somber spear and thrust it into the center of the mass of furiously dancing tentacles, using the whole weight of her body to give the strike some force. The silver blade pierced the flesh of the abomination and disappeared inside, causing a river of black blood to flow onto the alloy surface of the raft. The corpse of Soul Reaper lost balance and fell flat into the puddle of blood. She remained lying there, not paying the convulsing tentacles any attention. Slowly, an eerie smile of satisfaction appeared on the dead body's blood-stained face. That feels better. Sonny let go of the slain creature and sent it back into the water with a furious kick. Saint moved back to the middle of the raft, balancing it with her prodigious weight. The crow slid off her shoulder and landed on the edge of the pool of black blood. It stared at it for a moment, then cawed excitedly.
Ha! Sue! Sue!
Sonny summoned the graceless dusk back and remained motionless for a while, looking at the dark expanse of the ocean. The sunrise in Antarctica was a long affair by now. The sky was on the precipice of falling into a long period of twilight, but the cold waters still seemed black. After a month or two of dawn, it would be a day for about 4 months, followed by a couple of months of dusk. There would be far fewer shadows around for close to half a year, which meant that Sonny was going to have a much harder time fighting. Many of his advantages would disappear, provided that the forces of humanity would even be able to last that long, of course. There was a good chance that they wouldn't. But there was also a good chance that they would. The situation in East Antarctica was much better than it had been in the Antarctic Center. It was more or less exactly what the government had hoped for. After the tumultuous first phase of the operation, all the population had been relocated to several siege capitals. The soldiers had hunkered down, and people were being slowly carried across the ocean to the other quadrants. That process would last until the end of the year at least. There were 3 field armies of the 1st Evacuation Army currently operating in East Antarctica, which was exactly 3 times more than the single one that had been sent to the Antarctic Center. There were also 2 saints there, one of the government's own, and the emissary of the great clan Song. Once Saint Tyrus recovered from her wounds, there would be 3. The 2nd Army was on its way as well. They would be making landfall in just a few days, and once that happened, the human forces on the continent would be incredibly bolstered. The 2nd Army was supposed to be composed of twice as many mundane soldiers, awakened, and masters as the 1st Army had been. Close to 5,000 awakened had died in the Antarctic Center, but by the end of August, there would be 60,000 of them defending East Antarctica. Best of all, there was no winter beast to suppress all forms of long-range communications there, allowing the army to operate as the well-oiled machine it was supposed to be. That had to be enough to withstand the onslaught of the Chain of Nightmares for 5 more months. By then, most of the population would hopefully be evacuated, and if not, there was the winter solstice. With how rampant the spell had been spreading in the southern quadrant, the number of awakened was bound to double, or even triple after the solstice. All the sleepers created by the Chain of Nightmares would receive the chance to come into their full power. So, although the forces arrayed against the evacuation effort would continue to grow more dire as time went on, the forces of humanity would swiftly increase too. However, Sunny knew that there was one unpredictable part of the equation that could ruin everything: the Great Clans. Nephis had told him that the Southern Campaign was a perfect battlefield for them to wage their war, and so there was a large possibility that clan song and valor would clash in East Antarctica, complicating the already dreadful situation. There was no sense or reason in their insane feud, at least none that Sunny and Neph could see. And yet, the threat posed by the War of Great Clans was very real. As Sunny looked at the ocean, his eyes glinted with cold, wrathful light.
Those bastards.
He had not even noticed when his hands turned into fists.
Penny for your thoughts?
Sunny turned slightly and looked at Jet. She had sat up and was now wiping the nightmare creature's blood off her face, looking slightly less corpsely, but only slightly. She was still a far cry from the fearsome Soul Reaper he knew. He stared at her silently, then shrugged.
I guess.
Usually statements like this were followed by something unpleasant. She looked at the dark waves and shook her head.
I think that you have maybe forgotten who you are and where you came from. I am only saying it because I went through the same thing many years ago. When I left the outskirts, I was tempted to forget the truth of things too, and I did for a little while. But the world has a way of reminding you what it is, and what you should expect from it. Sunny, don't grow soft. You of all people should know better.
Sunny looked at her, his face unmoving. After a few moments, he shook his head.
We are not on the outskirts anymore, and we are not the same people anymore.
A pale grin slowly appeared on Soul Reaper's lips.
That is true too.
She lay down and stared at the sky, silent. After a while, though, Jet said,
Maybe you're right. Maybe people like us have to change too. Inflexible things are the most brittle after all. But look around. With how things are going, the whole world just might end up like the outskirts soon. What are we supposed to do then?
Sunny laughed.
I'm the last person you should be asking for advice. What are we supposed to do? I have no idea. I don't even know what we are supposed to do tomorrow, let alone in the vague future. Let's just keep things simple. Today we need to survive. Tomorrow too. After that, we'll see. It would already be nice if we get the privilege of having a choice in the matter.
Jet turned her head and looked at him seriously. Then she said in a solemn tone,
I can't survive, though. I'm already dead.
They stared at each other silently for a few moments, then both laughed. The raft continued to drift on the cold waves. From time to time, Saint would raise her bow and send a black arrow into the dark water. Every time she did, the spell would whisper into Sunny's ear, announcing a kill. Other times he would have to dive into the ocean himself and help her deal with the attacking abominations. Shadow fragments slowly trickled into his soul. The next day, Sunny procured another nightmare creature for Jet to kill, and the day after that, one more. On the third day, her crow returned from its scouting trip much sooner than usual, announcing that it had seen land. Not long after that, they saw a dark line on the horizon. On the fourth day, the raft finally reached the inhospitable shore, and the two of them set foot on solid ground again. East Antarctica welcomed them with cold winds, dim twilight, and the familiar call of the whispering nightmare gates. East Antarctica was many times larger than the Antarctic Center, both in terms of territory and population. Its landscape was also much more varied, with vast plains, long mountain chains, and numerous lakes that ranged from relatively small to those that were as large as sea. Somewhere out there in that cold expanse, 21 siege capitals were currently enduring the onslaught of nightmare creatures. Each of them was comparable to Falcon Scott in size, and there were close to 900 million people protected by their walls. Sonny was looking into the distance, feeling a bit uncomfortable. In front of him was a vast plain that stretched to the horizon, covered in snow. It was littered by giant boulders that stood like solemn monuments to the ancient past, and cut by countless deep canyons. Here and there, hordes of abominations could be seen, flowing across the plain like dark rivers. After months spent in the mountainous Antarctic Center, it was strange to be able to see that far. The world was broad and shrouded in dim twilight, looking quite surreal. Sonny felt exposed.
What a bleak sight.
It was still better than the poisoned wilderness of the other continents. He could freely breathe here at least. There were also far fewer scars left by the destructive wars of the dark times here, although there were some. He could see the skeletal remains of massive war machines and the ruins of destroyed towns far in the distance, all covered with snow. With a sigh, Sonny turned around. Behind him was a slope leading to the ocean shore. Jet had just finished climbing the slope and stopped near him, breathing heavily. She still looked like a dead woman walking, but at least she was breathing again. That alone made her less unnerving. Soul Reaper remained silent for a few moments, then cursed quietly.
There are still gates near us.
Indeed, the call was still too strong for them to escape into the dream realm. She studied the plain before looking at him.
Do you have a working communicator?
Sonny shifted awkwardly, then gestured to the graceless dust.
This is a transcendent armor, you know. It has many wonderful enchantments. Sadly, one thing it doesn't have is pockets. I used to carry a few useful items inside a spatial storage memory, but those were all destroyed by the Heart of Darkness. So, no, I don't have a communicator on me.
Indeed, the covetous coffer was more or less empty now. Sonny had spent most of his supplies during the escape to Falcon Scott, and what little remained was then obliterated by the Dark Beetles. The only thing they had not been able to destroy were the spools of diamond thread from the Ebony Tower. Jet sighed.
Pity. Mine was frozen solid. We can't even contact Army Command then.
Sonny watched the distant hordes of nightmare creatures for a while.
Well then, we just have to keep moving deeper inland until we find a safe spot to use our anchors.
Soul Reaper grimaced, which looked quite frightening, considering her current state. She lingered for a few seconds, then shook her head.
Moving inland won't be easy. This place is in a much better state than the Antarctic Center was, but that's just inside the siege capitals. Out here in the wilderness, the nightmare creatures still reign unopposed. You know better than anyone how hard it is to traverse an environment like this.
Sonny smiled darkly.
Luckily, we don't need to travel for 3,000 kilometers, and no civilians are slowing us down. Hell, there's not even a murderous sea to flood the entire world every night. Come on, it's going to be like a picnic.
He called, and a moment later, a Stygian black steed rose from the shadows. Nightmare snorted, ominous red flames burning in his eyes. The stallion's adamantine horns glinted dully in the bleak twilight of the early dawn. He scoffed.
It's a bit of a stretch to call us friends, and I think you are selling yourself short. I fought a couple of masters from Balor, you know. They're not that tough.
Soul Reaper grinned.
Oh? How come you ended up stuck in the waking world for half a year then?
Sonny stared at her for a moment.
Good point.
With that, he jumped into the saddle, looked at Jet from above, and offered her a hand.
Come on, climb up.
She hesitated, prompting Sunny to raise an eyebrow.
What? What's wrong?
Jet cleared her throat.
What do you mean, what's wrong? I don't know how to ride a horse. Why would I know how to ride a horse? I've never ridden one. I've never even seen one before your echo.
Sunny blinked a couple of times, then suddenly laughed. That laugh surprised him because he had not thought himself capable of laughing after Falcon Scott.
Gods, you don't need to ride anything. I'll control the horse. You just sit in front of me and don't fall off. I'm sure you can handle that much at least.
Jet sighed, then grabbed his hand and jumped up. Nightmare exhaled loudly through his nostrils, confused as to why a corpse was sitting on top of him. Shadow God was also the god of death, though, so the Shadow Steed must have been accustomed to such things happening. Or not. In any case, he would have to deal with it. Jet looked down nervously.
Sunny, how fast is your horse exactly?
He smirked.
Pretty fast.
With that, Sunny sent Nightmare forward. Soul Reaper would have yelped, but she was still having trouble breathing, so all she produced was a stifled hiss. The nightmarish steed carried a dead woman and a divine shadow as it raced across the snow-covered plain, moving deeper into the cold expanse of a doomed continent.